Good evening, and welcome to our daily devotional reading. To those who are members of our imaginary monastery, a special welcome. With those, of course, I mean the ones subscribed and or commenting. If you're just dropping in, you're also most welcome to join us today and again, if you so wish, in the future. We are reading through all of Plato in 1 year. At least all the dialogues that the scholars agree has probably most definitely been written by Plato himself. We are currently in Phaedo. It's the dialogue that portrays the death of Socrates. So before we begin with that, let's just take a moment to drop into our bodies, into the here and now, to be present, to try to be present with Plato and his characters, and especially with Socrates. And it is Socrates speaking. Let us then, in the first place, he said, be careful of allowing or admitting into our souls the notion that there is no health or soundness in any arguments at all. Rather say that we have not yet attained to soundness in ourselves, and that we must struggle manfully and do our best to gain health of mind. It might very well be that it's courageously, seeing that Andrea and the word for courage and the word for man is very closely related. You and all other men having regard to the whole of your future life, and I myself in the prospect of death. For at this moment I am sensible that I have not the temper of a philosopher. Like the vulgar, I am only a partisan. Now the partisan, when he is engaged in a dispute, cares nothing about the rights of the question, but is anxious only to convince his hearer of his own assertion. And the difference between him and me at the present moment is merely this, that whereas he seeks to convince his hearers that what he says is true, I am rather seeking to convince myself. To convince my hearers is a secondary matter with me. And do but see how much I gain by the argument. For if what I say is true, then I do well to be persuaded of the truth. But if there is be nothing after death, still during the short time that remains, I shall not distress my friends with lamentations, and my ignorance will not last, but will die with me. And therefore no harm will be done. This is the state of mind, Simmias and Sebes, in which I approach the argument. And I would ask you to be thinking of the truth and not of Socrates. Agree with me if I seem to you to be speaking the truth. Or if not, withstand me, might and main, that I may not deceive you as well as myself in my enthusiasm, and like the bee leave my sting in you before I die. Now let us proceed, he said, and first of all let me be sure that I have in my mind what you were saying. Simmias, if I remember rightly, has fears and misgivings whether the soul, although a fairer and diviner thing than the body, being as she is in the form of harmony, may not perish first. On the other hand, Sebes appeared to grant that the soul was more lasting than the body, but he said that no one could know whether the soul, after having worn out many bodies, might not perish herself and leave her last body behind her. And that this is death, which is the destruction not of the body, but of the soul. For in the body the work of destruction is ever going on. Are not these, Simmias and Sebes, the points which you have considered? They both agreed to this statement of them. He proceeded. And did you deny the force of the whole preceding argument, or of a part only? Of a part only, they replied. And what did you think, he said, of that part of the argument in which we said that knowledge was recollection, and hence inferred that the soul must have previously existed somewhere else before she was enclosed in the body? Seber said that he had been wonderfully impressed by that part of the argument, and that his conviction remained absolutely unshaken. Simmias agreed, and added that he himself could hardly imagine the possibility of his ever thinking differently. But, rejoined Socrates, you will have to think differently, my Theban friend, if you still maintain that harmony is a compound, and that the soul is a harmony which is made out of strings set in the frame of the body. For you will surely never allow yourself to say that a harmony is prior to the elements which compose it. Never, Socrates. But do you see that this is what you imply when you say that the soul existed before she took the form and body of man, and was made up of elements which as yet had no existence? For harmony is not like the soul as you suppose, but first the guitar and the strings and the sound exist in a state of discord, and then harmony is made last of all, and perishes first. And how can such a notion of the soul as this agree with the other? Not at all, replied Simmias. And yet, he said, there surely ought to be harmony in a discourse of which harmony is the theme. There ought, replied Simmias. But there is no harmony, he said, in the two propositions that knowledge is recollection and that the soul is a harmony. Which of them do you retain? I think, he replied, that I have a much stronger faith, Socrates, in the first of the two, which has been fully demonstrated to me, than in the latter, which has not been demonstrated at all, but rests only on probable and plausible grounds, and is therefore believed by the many. I know too well that these arguments from probabilities are impostors, and unless great caution is observed in the use of them, they are apt to be deceptive, in geometry and in other things too. But the doctrine of knowledge and recollection has been proven to me on trustworthy grounds, and the proof was that the soul must have existed before she came into the body, because to her belongs the essence of which the very name implies existence. Having, as I'm convinced, rightly accepted this conclusion, and on sufficient grounds, I must, as I suppose, cease to argue or follow others to argue that the soul is a harmony. Let me put the matter, Simmias, he said, in another point of view. Do you imagine that a harmony or any other composition can be in a state other than that of the elements out of which it is compounded? Certainly not. Or do or suffer anything other than they do or suffer? He agreed. Then a harmony does not, properly speaking, lead the parts or elements which makes up the harmony, but only follows them, he assented. For harmony cannot possibly have any motion or sound or other quality which is opposed to its parts. That would be impossible, he replied. And does not the nature of every harmony depend upon the manner in which the elements are harmonized? I do not understand you, he said. I mean to say that a harmony admits of degrees, and is more of a harmony and more completely a harmony when more truly and fully harmonized, to any extent which is possible, and less of a harmony and less completely harmony when less truly and fully harmonized. True, But does the soul admit of degrees? Or is one soul in the very least degree more or less completely a soul than another? Not in the least. Yet surely of two souls, one is said to have intelligence and virtue, and to be good, and the other to have folly and vice, and to be an evil soul. And this is said truly. Yes, truly. But what will those who maintain the soul to be a harmony say of this presence of virtue and vice in the soul? Will they say that here is another harmony and another discord, and that the virtuous soul is harmonized, and a self being a harmony has another harmony within her, and that the vicious soul is inharmonical and has no harmony within her? I cannot tell, replied Simmias, but I suppose that something of the sort would be asserted by those who say that the soul is a harmony. And we have already admitted that no soul is more a soul than another, which is equivalent to admitting that harmony is not more or less harmony, or more or less completely a harmony. Quite true. And that which is not more or less a harmony is not more or less harmonized. True. And that which is not more or less harmonized cannot have more or less of harmony, but only an equal harmony. Yes, an equal harmony. Then one soul, not being more or less absolutely a soul than another, is not more or less harmonized. Exactly. And therefore has neither more nor less of discord, nor yet of harmony. She has not. And having neither more nor less of harmony or of discord, one soul has no more vice or virtue than another, if vice be discord and virtue harmony. Not at all more. Or speaking more correctly, Simmias, the soul, if she is a harmony, will never have any vice, because a harmony, being absolutely a harmony, has no part in the inharmonical. No. And therefore a soul which is absolutely a soul has no vice. How can she have if the previous arguments hold? Then if all souls are equally by their nature souls, all souls of all living creatures will be equally good. I agree with you, Socrates, he said. And can all this be true, think you? He said. For these are the consequences which seem to follow from the assumption that the soul is a harmony. It cannot be true. Once more he said, what ruler is there of the elements of human nature other than the soul, and especially the wise soul? Do you know of any? Indeed, I do not. And is the soul in agreement with the affections of the body, or is she at variance with them? For example, when the body is hot and thirsty, does not the soul incline us against drinking, and when the body is hungry against eating? And this is only one instance out of 10,000 of the opposition of the soul to the things of the body. Very true. But we have already acknowledged that the soul, being a harmony, can never utter a note at variance with the tensions and relaxations and vibrations and other affections of the strings out of which she is composed. She can only follow, she cannot lead them. It must be so, he replied. And yet do we not now discover the soul to be doing the exact opposite, leading the elements of which she is believed to be composed, almost always opposing and coercing them in all sorts of ways throughout life, sometimes more violently with the parts of medicine and gymnastic, then again more gently, now threatening, now admonishing the desires, passions, fears, as if talking to a thing which is not herself, as Homer in the Odyssey represents Odysseus doing in the words. He beat his breast and thus reproached his heart. Endure, my heart, far worse hast thou endured. Do you think that Homer wrote this under the idea that the soul is a harmony capable of being led by the affections of the body, and not rather of a nature which should lead and master them? Herself a far diviner thing than any harmony? Yes, Socrates, I quite think so. Then, my friend, we can never be right in saying that the soul is a harmony. For we should contradict the divine Homer and contradict ourselves. True, he said. This much said Socrates of Harmonia, your Theban goddess, who has graciously yielded to us. But what shall I say, Cebes, to her husband Cadmus, and how shall I make peace with him? I think that you will discover a way of said Cebes. Probably. I am sure you have put the argument with Harmonia in a manner that I could never have expected. For when Simmias was mentoring his difficulty, I quite imagined that no answer could be given to him, and therefore I was surprised at finding that his argument could not sustain the first onset of yours, and not impossibly the other, whom you call Cadmus, may share a similar fate. Thus far our scripture of the evening. I was quite fond of the idea of the soul being a harmony as well. It happens often when I read Plato that Socrates is thrown or faced with arguments that I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's a good point. How is he gonna respond to that? And then he does respond in ways that is quite convincing. I really admire Socrates' attitude at the beginning. We talked yesterday of the misologist, and Socrates is emphasizing here that we should follow the arguments where they lead us. And I think I've heard it said that Aristotle said that he left Plato because one should value truth higher than any man. But we saw it Socrates already saying it here, Plato saying it via Socrates. And I think it's also in the Republic somewhere. So I think also in that, Aristotle was actually just following his teacher, valuing truth higher than any man. So today I want to play the game. Let's go metaphysical, despite what I said previously. What is a soul? As I said, I really like the idea of the soul being in a harmony, and the first argument that, well, you can't believe both in that knowledge is recollection of things that you knew before your birth, and in the soul being a harmony, that's not a problem for me because I do not believe the former. I do not buy into the recollection, knowledge as being recollection idea. Hey, maybe I'm wrong. There are so many arguments rising up now from things I've read that seem to disprove me, but let's go with no. And so it's the latter arguments of Socrates that made me think. So I was thinking, Maybe the soul is not the harmony, but the song. Our bodies are instruments. And who we become from these instruments is a song that we play or sing ourselves. So that seems like picking yourself up by your own bootstraps. But indeed, there are more virtues in some than in others, and some have more beautiful souls than others. And it's usually people who put in more work in the cultivation of their own characters, or are just blessed with a very good nature, I don't know. And I also have to think of people who sing your song. They're just people who you resonate with. See, even in the word, you resonate with certain people. Oh, I miss them now. I have many people in my life with whom I literally sing sometimes. I love that. And spontaneously, not in a choir. Though I used to do that. I love that as well. A non-singing friend once pointed out, being with me and a singing friend, that being with us is like being in a musical. We just spontaneously burst into song from time to time. That's fun. And then our song does stop when we die, in a way, when our instrument starts decomposing. But it doesn't really, because other people pick up our song and continue singing it, maybe with their own variations, hopefully with their own variations. Something stays, something lingers of our song. Like that annoying tune that, I'm probably that annoying tune that you just can't get out of your head. I'm probably not the masterpiece performed on purpose. So that's my theory of the soul. That the soul is the song we sing into being, by being. And some people know how to play their own music instrument and some people don't. In the Republic, definitely there's an element of harmonizing your soul out of discord. The free part soul comes in the Republic. I don't know. Thank you for singing with me tonight. I really do hope that our imaginary monastery could become a source of harmonizing our individual and collective souls, helping us along the path in search of truth. May Sophia be with you.